No more toxic environments. So the other day, I kind of posted on our story that I'm going to be talking about environments and how to identify if you're in an environment that might be considered toxic. A lot of times we put ourselves in environments that we unknowingly don't realize that they are toxic. So into today's episode, I'm really going to be talking about my recent move and basically how I determined the environment that I was in was somewhat toxic and I had to basically remove myself from that environment. And a lot of times when it comes to a move in our lives, we're either pursuing a desire or we are trying to get away from whatever the toxic environment may have been. And if that's you today, we're gonna go deep into how to basically analyze your situation, how to determine your next move, and how to actually maximize this. And I'm really going to actually help you guys by talking about my own story and like mistakes that I've made. I've been averaging a move probably one move about every 2 years at this point. And every time I move, it leads to a lot of growth. And if I didn't do it in a very strategic way, I would probably say that the amount of growth that I received wouldn't have been as well, right? So we're going to be talking about a lot of that today, and then also we're going to go over some biblical principles to kind of give you guys a way to really think about this from a spiritual standpoint. So you are actually receiving counsel from God in this season of your life as well. So whether you are in a season where you're sick and tired of where you're living, where you're staying, or you might be in a season where you don't know what's next for your life, stay tuned because we're going to go over all that today in today's episode. But before I do want to kind of talk about my kind of journey as it relates to a lot of the moves that I've have done in my own life. So one of the first moves that I did was basically when I actually moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I essentially was pursuing this career in football. So that was one of those situations that I was kind of telling you, either you're going to be pursuing a desire or leaving a painful situation. I could arguably say it was both for me because I would say when I left for college, I didn't. Literally left college and I told myself that I would never come back home. I would never be in this situation. Like I spent 18 years in this household and I just really wanted to remove myself. So I was not only going after desire, but I was also going away from pain. And a lot of times we have to be sick and tired of our situation in order to change things. But whether you are in a situation like that now or not, you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until you're in that situation to really start thinking about this stuff. So really, I'm giving this to you so you could be proactive and understand potentially where you might be. Um, so I essentially went off to college, and this was one of the first moves that I essentially did, and this was the first time that I experienced an environment change and the impact that it has. So, from a spiritual standpoint, let's just start there. I was, prior to high school, prior to college, from a spiritual standpoint, I was not surrounded around with people that really motivated me spiritually. And I remember when I went to college, this was like one of the first times that I essentially surrounded myself with people that I felt like were going all in their faith. But even though I was surrounded by that, I still didn't go all in with my faith. And the reason I think the reason that was because I really was focused on like football and the materialistic things that brought to my life. So that was one of the first times that I experienced like an environment change. But more recently, some of the environment things that I have experienced was various moves. So I moved to Portland and I can't remember. It was like 2018, 2019. Then I moved to California during the pandemic. That was 2020. I moved there with an ex-girlfriend at the time. And then I moved to Arizona probably roughly like 3 years ago. So with every single move, I learned something. And it is super scary. It's hard to just get up and go. But really what has led to me to be able to do this is like I had to shift my mindset and I had to put myself in this position that I realized like I had nothing to lose. You see, when I no longer had the scarcity mindset, and I no longer was thinking that, hey, I don't want to make this move because I'm scared of losing here in this my life. Instead of looking at the fear, I was looking at the opportunity, right? And that's really and that's what has led to me being able to be optimistic about my moves. And every single time there's like a game plan that I have when I get into a new city. I'm like, all right, these are the exact steps, these are the places I'll be hitting, this is how I'm going to get plugged in. And I'll literally give you guys like the roadmap. So if you've never like moved, or you're in a position where you're like, I wouldn't even know what I would do if I had to go into a new city, I'll give you guys literally the roadmap. It's worked for me time and time again. And I will give you guys I also will explain to you, like, how do you know when your time in a place is coming to an end? All of that's very important, because like these decisions that you make in your life could make or break your future, really. So basically, let's kind of get into it, guys. I think that's enough for the intro here. So the first thing that I have on the schedule here is how to change your environment for breakthrough in your business, relationship, and faith, right? So the first thing that you want to do when it comes to wanting to change your environment, first you need to be aware. You need to be aware of what's going on in your environment. What are the things that aren't aligned with your purpose, with your vision for your life? And I like to say that a lot of this stuff, like, is about self-awareness. A lot of people aren't self-aware enough to understand their own desires, their own visions, because they don't take time to really think. And I've had times in my life where things are super crazy, and sometimes you don't have time to really think, but you really have to make sure that you make that time. So that's going to be the first thing, guys, is make sure that you're being self-aware of what your actual environment is. And once you are self-aware, then you could start focusing on the life that you want to live. What is the life? How much money do you want to make? How much relationships do you want to have in your life? Like, do you want to have community? Do you not want to have community? Because once you start thinking about these things, it'll be very clear as day on where you're at, if it's gonna basically help you get to whatever that goal is in your life. But if you're not sitting and you're not thinking and reflecting on what's the life that you want to build for yourself, if you're not doing those things, then it's going to be nearly impossible to reach or attain any of that, right? So one of the things for me, I'm gonna actually start talking about my most recent move, guys. So about a year ago, I ended up moving back home to Sarasota. And this is after 10 years of me literally telling myself I would never move back here. But after 10 years, I started realizing, like, my mom's getting older. I got nieces and nephews that I just haven't like experienced time with. So I literally told myself, hey, I'm going to move back home because there's this part of my life that I just want to experience. And, you know, I believe within like the year of me being home, I started telling myself lies. I started playing small in life. And I think it's easy to fall in that trap. And it really required other people to tell me, Jacob, you need to get out of that situation, because that situation is not helping you get to wherever you're trying to get to, and it's actually putting your life at risk. And I remember when I about a week ago, about a month ago, I was in California, and I was surrounded around by other entrepreneurs. And the one of the entrepreneurs at this event, I want to say really good friend, but like a good person, they said there's a cost to everything. So whether you are living with your parents, whether you are living with a family, whatever it is, living with a girlfriend, living by yourself, there's a cost to everything. And for me, that was living with my mom, living with my siblings, and there was a cost that was coming with it. And if my family's watching, I love you guys all, but we all know that there was a cost that came with me being at home. And I was in denial for the longest time. I was, because I enjoyed that comfortability. So That's where it goes back that you need to be very self-aware of where you're at and really make sure that you are um you know aligning with whatever that is in your business, relationship, and faith, right? So the big things that I really want to talk about here is like the habits that you build in your life. A lot of times we want a certain lifestyle, but we're not willing to have the habits that that lifestyle takes. And if you look around and you don't have people around you that are building those habits with you, you more than likely need to change your environment, because it's hard to do alone. It's hard to do by yourself. If you're already in a place where you're not consistent in your habits, you want to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with as many people as possible that have great habits, because habits are contagious. When you surround yourself with people that are energetic, people that are loving, people that are kind, like that is contagious. But if you surround yourself with like people that are always hating, shooting down your dreams, like it's easy to just go into a shell and play life very small. So people's gonna be, I would arguably say, the number one thing, like outside of like weather and like opportunities, like the people around you is gonna be a very important thing that you really want to make sure that you're focusing on. Um, so I also have here, are you the top person in the room? Like if you are literally like the top person in the room, and when I say top person, that's going to be subjective to what your current goals are. But if there's no one in the room that's doing better than you more than likely, if you're a go-getter, if you want to change, if you want to levitate, you more than likely want to get into rooms where you're not the biggest person in the room. And I could tell you right now, the second I got into rooms that I noticed there were people that were healthier, people that were making more money, people with better relationships in their life. It just motivated me. It gave me a way to think of life differently, especially if you come from a place like me where a lot of people around you aren't that driven, and they're a lot of people are just doing the wrong things and always getting in trouble. Like that was my lifestyle growing up. A lot of people see me today and they're like, how did you make it out? How did you get to where you're at? And I'm not gonna that not saying I'm like this super successful person, like from a from it depends on how you define success. But I remember, for me, I had to start exposing myself to different rooms. Once I saw different rooms, I started seeing opportunities. And now I literally go back home and I see people that I grew up with, and they have a very like some people around me. They don't realize the opportunities that are available to them. When you can't realize the opportunities that are out there in life, and I'll tell you right now, there's even bigger, more opportunities out there that I'm not even aware of. But until I challenge myself to get into those bigger rooms, that's when I'll start realizing those things. But with that being said, there's opportunities, there's a different perspective, there's always another perspective that you haven't thought about, that you are unaware of. And when you get into rooms where you're not the biggest person, you start realizing all the things you don't know, all the things that you lack. And honestly, it's very humbling too. It's very humbling. Like if you're a very prideful person, get into a bigger room and I guarantee you're going to be humbled. Pride is definitely not something you want to have in this life. It's definitely something you don't want to have in this world. And coming from a sports background, pride I think is something that typically comes with like the sports and the challenge, like or just the competitive background. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to like separate that. You got to be able to separate that pride and really humble yourself when it matters the most. And that's essentially, I would agree that God wants us to do that too. Um, Third here is this is still the first point, guys. We got about two more points. But the third thing that on this first point is, where are the opportunities? Before I move to any city, I always look at the opportunities in that city. I remember when I was just moving, when I was trying to decide when I was moving out of California, I was trying to decide my next city. I literally did research on all the top cities, population, median age, um, median income, like all of that stuff, because all that stuff has an impact. If you're like a person that you want, like, you don't know where to start, being in a bigger city sometimes helps because it gives you more people to and more people to meet, so you could actually see what is actually out there. And for me, that really helped me because I didn't really understand how to run a business 3 4 years ago. I had to learn that. And being in a bigger city, it gave me more opportunities to really meet people that could help me in my business, that could give me guidance, that could give me mentorship. And that's exactly what I did. But when you get to these cities, when you get to these opportunities, you're gonna get to a point where you're capped, where you're maxed, and you're gonna realize you would know when it is time to change. You would know when it's time to pivot and look for that next opportunity. When you start feeling like you're in a place that you're no longer growing. All right. So, point number two here, the biggest mistakes to avoid when considering a move. Oh man, guys, I've literally made so many mistakes when it came to moving. We'll get we'll get into them. I don't know how deep I'll get. Um but first, I mean, one of the first things this is not even in my notes here, guys, but one of the first things that I think about is moving for the wrong people, right? So I've had plenty of situations where I've moved for people, meaning like females, and worst thing that you could do for yourself, guys. I just from like an actual just like good advice, just life advice, do not ever move um for a relationship that you're not guaranteed to, be married in. I'll tell you right now, it's gonna lead to bad things if you're not, spiritually in a good place and spiritually disciplined enough to hold yourself accountable. So be careful when it comes to moving with people, guys, especially us men out here. It's very hard for us to, have uh, go against temptations when it comes to stuff like that. Um, so that's gonna be no, that's gonna be one of the biggest things. But another mistake you really want to avoid is do not focus on scarcity. Do not focus on what you don't have or what you're going to be losing, but focus more on the opportunities that you're going to be having in your life. So when you focus on the opportunities, you'll start realizing all the opportunities that you don't have right now. And if it's aligned with the goals and the vision that God has for you and that you might have for yourself, then it will give you more direction in where to go, and you'll also be more confident when it actually comes to making that move. So that's gonna be the biggest thing that's the first point that I have here. The second point here, don't allow other people to influence your decision. So a lot of times when it's time to make a move, people are not going to want you to move, guys. No one ever wants you to leave. Like, people are always going to say, no, don't go, like, stay here. Like, people are going to tell you what's in best interest of them, usually. Very, very rarely are people gonna look at you and say, "Oh yeah, I want you to move." Like, no one wants you to move away. Like, your mom's gonna want you to stay home. Your siblings are gonna want you to stay. Like, people like that, unless you guys don't get along. And if that's the case, they're gonna tell you to hit the road, right? Um, but you can't allow those people to influence your decision. The biggest influence that you want to make sure that the biggest influence should always be God. What is God telling you? What kind of counsel is he giving you? Are you asking him what is his will? Because that should be the determining factor. All right. So when it comes to that, the third thing here is don't seek comfortability. For the past year, I would say this is me, guys. I went from paying like a tremendous amount in rent, paying electricity, X, Y, or Z. And I love the idea of, I remember when I moved home, I was like, when I was young, it was the pride coming in the way that, I was like, I didn't want to go back to mom's house. But I realized, I literally told myself, that's just pride. And those are the stories that like you really have to be careful with, is like, why really reflect on why you are changing your stories. Why are you telling yourself these things? Because sometimes we are telling ourselves things because we want comfortability. A lot of times comfortability is not the path to go. The road less traveled is usually the way that you want to go, because it's the path that will allow you to really grow, right? You want to have this long-term perspective thinking when you are making your decisions. I literally think in terms of investor, because investors, when they make decisions, they're always thinking in terms of the long term. If you're thinking in terms of the short term, you will make irrational decisions that will only last very little life in your life. It would let very little, right? So be careful when it comes to that. You really want to have this long-term thinking. um, all right. So we have gone over how you could basically change your environment. We talked about the habits, we kind of talked about the mindset around it. We then talked about the mistakes to avoid. And I have a couple Bible verses for this one here. So let me see if I could share my screen here. All right, so let's see here. So I'm not going to share my screen here. Um, but I did want to talk about like the toxic definition. I have here that what the definition of toxic. It says um poisonous, very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or an insidious way, right? So when I think of harmful or unpleasant, we have to think of what the outcome is. What is the goal? And when it comes to our goal, if things are harmful towards our goal, that's what is considered toxic. So when it comes to our life, if we have goals and the environment that we're in is harmful to our goals, it's considered toxic, guys. So this term toxic, it doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be, oh, this very like bad situation. We need to redefine how we view our the toxic things in our lives. I would argue that we more people have toxic things in their in our lives than we are actually admitting to. If we start admitting that we have more toxic things in our life, we would start letting a lot more things go. Okay? Um so the verse that I have here, I wanted to kind of bring you to Matthew 13:57 through 58 on this one. So let's go ahead and give me a second while I look this verse up. Matthew, ESV. So ESV, Matthew 13, and then 57. All right, so this says, and they took offense at him, but Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own household. And he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. All right. So that verse is very important because I wanted to point out to you guys a mistake that you could make is being surrounded by people with unbelief. Jesus himself literally said that he literally did not want to surround himself with people that had unbelief because he understood the impact it has. So you really want to surround yourself with people that have belief in you. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So let's go to Luke 4:24 next. So Luke Luke 4:24. All right, so Luke 4:24, and he said, truly I say to you, no prophet is acceptable in his hometown. 24 through 30, okay? But in truth, I tell you, there were many widows in Israel in the days of Elijah, when the heavens were shut up 3 years and 6 months, and a great famine came over all the land. And Elijah was sent to none of them, but only to Zarephath in the land of Sidon, to a woman who was a widow. And there were many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed, but only Naaman the Syrian. When they heard these things, All of the synagogues were filled with wrath, and they rose up and drove him out of the town and brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they could throw him down the cliff. But passing through their midst, he went away. All right. So really the biggest thing is just like saying how like the prophet wasn't being accepted in his hometown. So a lot of times like people around us that have seen us grow up, they don't see the opportunities. They don't see the mindset that you have. And it's hard for them to see the vision because they're used to seeing you a different way. They're not used to this new version of you. And if you're in a situation like that, sometimes like when you get in a city where people could view you differently for who you truly are today and not who you were in the past, that's what you want around you. Okay. Um, so let's go to last one here. Mark 3:31 here. Some of this actually is we're already in point 4 where we're kind of bringing the Bible verses into it. But Mark 3:31 here, this essentially is going to be talking about how Jesus himself was focusing on his mission and not, the things that he was scared of, the things he was fearful for. So Jesus' mother and brother, and his mother and his brother came standing outside. They sent to him and called him. So this is actually one of my favorite verse stories of Jesus. Like basically in this story, like he's preaching in the synagogue, and basically they came out and they told him, they're like, his mom and brother were calling him, and he was like, and they basically was like, Jesus was like, no, like my family is the people that are in here with me right now. That's who my family is. And the significance behind this was that Jesus was focused around his mission. He wasn't focused on his family. He was focusing on what his God-given purpose was on this in this world. So I'm going to go ahead and continue reading the verse here. And his mother and his brother came, and standing outside they sent to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mother and my brothers? And looking about, Jesus is so funny. Literally, he's like, who are my mothers and brothers? Like Jesus knew he's I love when he's like asking these rhetorical questions. And looking about those who sat around him, he said, here are my mothers and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. What I learned from that right there is we need to redefine who we call brothers, who we call sisters, who we call mothers, who we call family. You see, it's telling us here that the people that that are doing God's will, those are your family. The people that are whoever does the will of God is literally family. That's what it says. It's not this idea of, oh, this is my blood, so therefore my family. It's no, who's doing God's will? Those are the people I need to be with right now. Um, so I thought that was very cool and great when it comes to like really analyzing your situation, right? So most importantly, let's see here. A couple more Bible verses here. So Genesis 2:15, really this it says the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. That's a location that God put these people. And the biggest thing is Adam and Eve, they were stewards. They didn't own the garden. They were put there. They were the resources that were in this garden, they were responsible of. And that's how we have to think about our environment. When God puts you in a new city, when God puts you in a new house, when he puts you in a new school, be a steward. Be a steward. Realize the blessings that you have when you have that opportunity. And be a steward for God. Understand what he wants you to do. So next year, Jesus often tells people to go. That's where he has blessings awaiting for us. So a lot of times in the Bible, when we're reading passages, Jesus doesn't say, Jesus says go. He did, a lot of times they don't have the mission. They don't have the end goal. They just know that God says go. And that's how we need to um that's how we need to decide our moves in this life. We need, when God says go, we just need to listen and apply and take action. So let's look at Genesis 12:1. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from the country, your people, to the land I will show you." Abraham didn't know where the land was. He just he God literally just said go, and that's what he had to do. And along the journey, that's where the land was identified along the journey. So when it comes to your environment and making that next move, take that first step. Do not worry about the next 15, 20 steps. Do not worry about the end goal. Do not worry about how your rent's going to be paid. Do not worry about the job that you're going to get. When God says go, be obedient and make that move. Just go and allow God to provide. I'll tell you right now, time and time again, God has always provided in my life. He's never failed me. And I and I promise you, if you have faith and you do the same, he'll do the same for you. So that's Genesis 12:1. So next verse here. So First Kings 17:9. Go at once to Zephath. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. Another example where God is literally just saying go. All right. I have a couple more verses here. Um, So the wrong place can lead to troubles here. So the environment can shape your values, lead you into temptations, or bring judgment. All right. I will tell you, my most recent environment wasn't the best environment for me. I slowly was changing who I was because I didn't have strong people around me to really help me. Right. And I so let's look at some of these verses. Genesis 13:12-13. Lot lived among the cities of the plain, but the people of Sodom were wicked. Okay. Lot chose a prosperous but spiritually toxic place. And that's one of the reasons why me personally, I didn't want to move to Miami. Great opportunities in Miami. But what do I hear? I haven't been in there myself to really experience, but I hear it's all about the partying, and I knew that wasn't a scene that I wanted to be around. I wanted to be around a scene where there's young people that will motivate me to pursue God, to go all out in my faith, and that's what I decided to pursue. Okay, so Lot chose a prosperous but spiritually toxic place. The big part with that is like realizing that you could be in a spiritually toxic place where your environment might not enable you to really fulfill your full spiritual calling that God has for you, right? Point number 3 here, God blesses obedience in the right place. So Deuteronomy 28:3, you will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. Location isn't about rural or urban, it's about God's covering. All right. So, based off of where you go and your obedience, that determines how God covers you. And I'm happy to say God has covered me most of my life. I would say there's things that He's allowed to happen because I probably wasn't as obedient, but for the most part, I can say He's covered me. All right. So that is today's call on environment. I did want to end and just kind of give you guys more of a direct story of where I'm at and why I moved. Anyways, so I recently moved to St. Petersburg. So it's 45 minutes north of my family, just far enough to like where I don't have to see them every day, but far enough to where I could actually go home, see the nephews, nieces, and make sure I'm not missing out on too much life, right? Because we have a very limited time in this world. And but with that being said, I last Monday I came up to St. Petersburg and I did a run club. It was called Health and Heaven and Health. Shout out to them. Very great group. If you're in the St. Petersburg, make sure you check them out. Um, And I realized really quickly that they have a strong community here that I've been yearning for, that I've been looking for ever since I left Arizona. One of the biggest reasons I left Arizona is because I felt like I didn't have community. Life is not meant to do alone. Life is meant to do with a community. That's how God did life. He had 12 disciples. He was always going out, doing mission work, and that's what we're called to do. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I left Arizona and I was in Sarasota and I wasn't able to find it. Why I wasn't able to find it? Arguably because I didn't get out enough. There wasn't as many opportunities, but you want to set yourself up for success no matter what the goal is, no matter what the decision is that you're making in your life. You want to make sure that you set yourself up for success by putting the right things into your life. And part of that is being in an environment where it's easy, right? Especially when you're first putting those habits into your life, right? So that's gonna be the one thing that I had to do differently. Um, but I moved to St. Petersburg after some a series of unfortunate events happened at home with my family, to the point where I realized that it was time to go. But before that, I was already debating it, and I had a lot of friends actually tell me, "You need to get out there. You need to get out. You need to challenge yourself. You need to be in a position, in a space that will help you focus." And ever since I've been here, I've been able to have like mental clarity, and I've been able to really focus on where I'm at in my life, based off of that. So I appreciate all you guys for hopping on tonight. It's been a pleasure. We're just wrapping up here. So um once again, guys, be careful with your environment. Make sure you guys like and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And make sure you guys comment, your favorite part about tonight. And without further ado, I'll kind of get end with a quick prayer here. And I will see you guys probably tomorrow night. I try to go live here as much as possible. Last week I was just moving, so wasn't able to go live every day last week, but I'm live on YouTube every single night, so make sure you guys tune in on YouTube. Our Father in heaven, thank you for just allowing us to be live tonight here in front of everybody. I just ask that you could just bless everyone that tuned in, Lord. I just ask that anybody that might be in an environment that might be toxic, that might not be fulfilling to them, Lord, I just ask that you could just help them to realize that where you need them, Lord, and don't allow fear to um, have an impact on their decisions, Lord, but allow them to make decisions based off of faith, Lord. I ask that these verses that we read tonight that people could apply, Lord, and I just ask that you could just be with me in this new season as I'm in a new city, a new place, new everything, Lord. I just ask that you continue guiding the paths of everyone, guide them into a place that is in your will, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys.